Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma was in that meeting. He is a member of the Senate Homeland Security meeting. Senator Lankford, good morning.
Good morning.
Many times when we talk to senators, we say, take us inside the room, but we got to see it all.
You're already there.
So my question for you, though, is based on what we saw, how likely do you think a bipartisan deal on DACA is?
No, I think it's been very likely all along. The president in September came out and said, I want to be able to have a legislative solution for DACA. I want to also do border security, do chain migration. And then he added later the visa lottery when that becomes such a big issue. Those four issues, what he's hammered on over and over again. There's been meetings in a bipartisan way for about 3 months now to try to be able to work through the process to be able to figure out what that is. Then you saw a much larger gathering of it yesterday at the White House.
But
I think it's very likely.
But it sounded like Senator Feinstein got the president to sign off on a clean bill.
You would have to be there for the whole context of the whole meeting. The whole meeting was about 2 hours. The press was in there about the first 50 minutes of it. There was a lot of back and forth. The president laid out at the very beginning, when he talks about doing DACA, it always includes border security. It always includes chain migration, those things. But he wants to limit it just to that, not do everything that was in the comprehensive bill and then do a second. I think Senator Feinstein misunderstood that, and she was trying to say, well, let's just only do DACA. And he was saying, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, knowing those four things that he'd already laid out as the principles.
So at the end of this meeting, Senator, was there a net increase in clarity on the president's position and on where things are going, or it seems kind of muddy?
No, I think there was real clarity in it, and he was trying to be able to work through. In fact, at the very end, Kevin McCarthy came back. Again, cameras right at that point to be able to go around the whole table with 20-some-odd people there were at the table, both House and Senate Republicans and Democrats, and say, can we agree these are the four areas? We're not going to do visa areas. We're not going to do some other areas that complicate a lot the immigration conversation. Just deal with the DACA and trying to deal with a permanent answer for what's happening for those DACA students. Then also deal with border security. We're still trying to define out the parameters of what that really means. But I think there's wide agreement on doing border security. Obviously, the chain migration has been a big issue. If you have about 1 million people, let's say 800,000, whatever that number may be for DACA, that's going to affect a lot of other families. So we have to deal with the chain migration as well, be able to figure out exactly what that means for the future.
You say the border security is still open to debate. Isn't that the key and important crux of the issue, which is Democrats don't want a wall as a condition for taking care of these DACA kids?
It has been. It's kind of an interesting debate. In 2006, there was wide bipartisan support for what was called the Secure Fence Act. At that time, 650 miles of fencing was added to the southern border. That was not a partisan issue at that point. It has become a partisan issue. I think the president tried to provide greater clarity yesterday that I hadn't heard him say before when he said out loud in front of the whole group with the media there, I'm not talking about a wall from sea to shining sea. This is not a 2,000-mile wall. There are certain sections of that border that need a wall, and then we need to do that. Other areas we need technology, other areas we need additional manpower, and quite frankly, there are loopholes in the law that we've got to be able to fix. That's part of the border security. If someone can get across the border and use loopholes in the law to be able to stay here, that becomes an issue as well. So all of those things are there, but it's not a 2,000-mile wall. I don't think that was ever his intent, but he was very clear about it yesterday.
Okay, because he does seem to say, Senator, different things at different times. So you think DACA can pass? Yeah. You think that it will pass without the border wall?
It's not a matter of without the border wall. There will be sections of the border wall that will be there. That's a part of border security. It's just not going to be a complete border wall for the entire 2,000 miles. Okay. It's going to be targeted specific areas.
Do you think it was helpful or hurtful to have the cameras there? It seemed to expose a lot of contradiction and conflict within the room.
You know, I think it's entirely appropriate to say the truth. It was interesting. I don't know that I've not been around this town very long, but it was interesting to be able to have the cameras in that meeting that long. As some of the press pool was leaving, one of the folks from the press pool turned and looked at me and said, that was unprecedented. We never have this kind of access to a meeting in the White House that we had yesterday because they were in there for the majority of the meeting. But I think it is interesting for people to be able to see the give and take, trying to provide clarity. It's one of the things I've said over and over again about immigration. If you don't define the scope of what you're talking about, you'll never get on to the next issue of trying to define that. And it's exceptionally important for these DACA students and for the families around the country, and quite frankly, for all of us dealing with border security, that we get this right.
All right. Well, it was certainly interesting to have a glimpse into to be in the room where it happened, so to speak. Thank you very much, Senator Lankford, for joining us this morning.
And good morning and welcome, John.
Thank you, Senator.
Very nice. Thank you, Senator. Very nice. An elite U.S. gymnast said